Hey there, I'm Drew from Fishtown Analytics, and this is a demo of dbt's brand new documentation functionality. In this video, I'm speaking with Emilie and Taylor from GitLab. They were kind enough to help us beta test the docs, and in the spirit of open source, we wanted to open up the conversation to the whole community. There are links to more information about the topics we cover in the description below. Additionally, be sure to check out Meltano, GitLab's new open source tool for the entire data science lifecycle. Hope you enjoy. All right, so I'm gonna do my best radio voice. All right. Emilie, Taylor, thank you both for joining me. On this call, I'd really like to get your DBT project set up with our new documentation feature.
Awesome.
So Taylor, thanks for sharing your screen. And I figure we can run some commands now and look at some docs. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, hopefully it works.
Great. Hopefully it works. The next command, dbt docs generate, is going to actually look at the database and figure out the columns in your different models. And so if they don't exist, it won't be an error. You just won't see like rich column types and names for all of your models. So we can see what we come up with.
Do I need to provide profiles and stuff too?
Yeah, here it's important.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So we've got a catalog. And what's cool is if you open the target directory here, yeah, you're 2 steps ahead of me. You can see there's catalog.json, which is a very long JSON file. So this is sort of like for every DBT model, the sort of type of the model, if it's a table or a view, as well as the column names, their types. There's no data in here. It's just like schema metadata.
Right.
The other one worth looking at is manifest.json. And so this is also gonna be a big JSON file. And so this is sort of a single file that contains a serialized version of your whole project. So our documentation site will read this file and understand all of your models, like their file path and their contents and things like that.
That's awesome.
And yeah, the very last one is called runresults.json. That was produced by dbt compile as well. And so this is all of your source code next to all of the compiled SQL.
Okay.
So these 3 files together are the actual content that we're going to render in the dbt docs. The doc site itself is this index.html file in there, which is like just a minified kind of scaffold for the site.
Okay.
So actually, I mean, you can look at it. It's going to be a mess. It's like a 1.4 megabyte HTML file.
Beautiful.
Like so okay, you can. I think wow, that looks cool. You're in dbt docs serve. Yeah. Profiles there. Yeah, cool. Okay. So it should whip your browser open.
Yeah, I just did it on a different screen.
Okay, awesome. So this is sort of like the home page. It gives some information about how to use the doc site, but I can serve as your documentation here. So if you want to maybe like pick a really core important model, like something that a lot of things kind of feed into, maybe something that you use directly for analysis. Maybe we can take a look at that.
What do you think, Emilie?
Yeah, opportunities XF is a good one.
Cool. So you can see a couple things off the bat. There's the name of the model, whether it's a table or a view or incremental or whatever at the top, as well as some details. So this is going to be expanded with what kind of database are you using behind the scenes?
This is Postgres.
Postgres. Okay, so we get some information like table owner, like which user owns the table. There's less rich statistical information on Postgres, but like on Redshift, there are fields like size on disk and skew and sort key skew and things like that. So they'll all show up here if we have them, but Postgres, it's a little bit limited. So then moving down, there's a description like pane here. And so we haven't written any documentation for this model, but maybe that could be a good exercise that we do kind of in the second part of this. So that supports like Markdown. We'll see more of that later. Then column, same thing where these are loaded from the database. It like represents the state in the database. And you can augment these with descriptions and eventually tests as well. And they'll show up right in this interface.
Wow.
And then finally, if you scroll down, there's a SQL tab. And so you can switch between source and compiled. I hope this works. Yeah, cool. Okay. So in the compiled tab, there's a really nice copy to clipboard that you can just paste right into like your SQL query runner, which is like very, very helpful.
That's pretty awesome.
It's cool. So, okay, can you go back to the source tab for a moment? So this references 3 other models. So what's cool is we provide a sort of mini map of your DAG. So can you click this little blue, circle? I don't know if it's blue or green, but here's kind of like where SFDC opportunity XF falls in your whole graph. So 3 things kind of, it selects from 2 different things, 3 other things select from it. And this gives you like a quick idea of like, what are the inputs and what, who cares about this thing while you're developing. Now what you can do is in the top right-hand corner, there's an expand button. And so we can kind of, in this case, zoom out is the idea. So it looks like, oh yeah, you can see lead source here. So that's like 2 steps removed from SFDC opportunity XF. So you can see the whole graph and you can like actually move things around, which is convenient. You couldn't do that on the old graph visualizer. You can't, just up and down or to the left, to the right doesn't work so great.
It does. It seems to be working.
The edges get messed up. They don't like flip to the other side, but it's kind of okay because it very much flows left to right,
Yeah.
So yeah, as you see, when you click different nodes, it'll show you the whole lineage of that node, which is useful when you have a really big graph to figure out like, what does this thing on the left side feed through to on the right side?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then you can do some other cool stuff. So maybe, can you click lead source?
This one?
Yeah, and then can you right click it actually and click refocus on node? So this sort of like does the same thing we were just doing for SFDC lead source, whatever, XF, but it is for just lead source. So you can actually see at the bottom, you see where it says -- models?
Yes.
So this is DBT model selection syntax, and it updates dynamically when you like visually interact with the graph. So what's cool is you can sort of play with this thing. So can you delete the plus off the end of lead source? Sorry, off the other end, yeah. Okay, so DBT grays out the things that are going to be deleted because we removed like all the children of lead source. So you can go ahead and press update graph and they'll be pruned. And then you can do a plus at the end again and they'll come back in. So this is really neat because you can sort of visually build a sub graph and then use the same syntax in the DBT command line to like run only those models. There's exclude as well, which takes the same syntax. So you can say all of the children of lead source except the children of like back opportunity or what have you, if you'd like to.
So like that.
Do F_opportunity there instead of lead source, and then put a plus after it. Cool. Gotcha. So if you update it, it'll remove that part of it.
That's cool.
So what's really neat is if you remove everything, like get rid of the exclude inputs, and get rid of the models inputs. Okay, and update the graph. This is going to be your whole graph. So this actually like looks pretty good. Some of the graphs we see are a little more all over the place. So what's neat is maybe it's hard for me to see the actual words, but if you pick one of the ones on the left side, like, yeah, kind of in that graph, you can click that and you can see its lineage all the way through, which is like pretty neat. Cool. So yeah, and so maybe you find one that you're really interested in learning more about. You can do the same thing where you right click it.
Let me do, hold on, I want to do, let's do that one. All right.
Okay, and you can either refocus on the node for sure. Cool. Or I like when the edges kind of like crisscross. That's pretty neat. Okay, so you can also right click on it and do view documentation. So this will jump you right into the docs for that particular model.
Very cool. Which is, this one's kind of boring, but
yeah, cool. So yeah, it's the flow between like sort of read the documentation, explore the graph, read other documentation.
Back.
Yeah.
So awesome. It's very much documentation, but it's also kind of discovery to some extent.
So my question coming from this real quick would be, so we were looking at lead source as an example. Maybe that's not the best example. So we have like these tables which sit on top of raw. Let me close this.
Yeah, these are just base models.
Yeah, so these are base models. So it'd be interesting to see in that lineage, not just like this base model, but where this is actually coming from as like a source.
Absolutely. So that's a really great segue. And actually, we can talk about that first, and then maybe we'll go a little further with it. So when you need to annotate a model, you currently do that through this file called schema.yaml. Do you have any schema tests in your project currently?
We do.
They're not going to show up in this doc site.
Oh, okay.
But okay, cool. So right now you can only have a schema.yaml file that annotates a model, but it's on a roadmap to add support for documenting a like source. And so this could be a whole schema of data, like just say your whole Salesforce data set brought in by whatever ETL service.
Meltano.
Exactly. Or, you know, or what have you. And what's really cool is you will hopefully be able to template these things. So you won't have to for every source say like, this is Meltano and this is what it means to be a Meltano table. And this is the frequency with which Meltano is bringing stuff in. You can just sort of say like, effectively in a macro, like here's my documentation for all the things brought in by Meltano. And apply that documentation to a source and then link the source to a base model and then see the full lineage from really in any model. It can say this pulls from Salesforce and event data and whatever. Pretty cool. So our current schema.yaml is like insufficiently descriptive to describe sort of documentation and rich markdown and sources and things like that. So we've updated the syntax for schema.yaml to like version 2. And so Taylor, I just sent over documentation for it. Perfect. Cool. So if you go to the schema.yaml files subheader there, yeah, we can see an example schema.yaml file. Cool. And so it looks pretty similar to the existing schema.yaml, but here it's more based around like the sort of hierarchy of like, I have a model, the model has columns, the columns have tests. So I figured we can take one of the models that we were just looking at and write a schema.yaml file for it, pretty much just copy and pasting this and changing some wording.
Okay.
And then look at that documentation in the doc site.
Okay, cool. So version, should I copy that in?
Yeah, perfect. So this is how DBT knows like, should use the V1 syntax, the V2 syntax.
So this is, okay, so should I make a new file in here or?
What's funny is it doesn't actually have to be called schema.yaml. You can call it anything.yaml. So maybe just call it like new schema.yaml. This would be like a temporary thing for right now. Cool. And if you paste that in, we'll change the name of events to whichever model you'd like.
SFTC account.
Cool. So you can give a description here for what that model does. Oh, great.
All right. What does this
say?
So a view, like a base view converting column names on SFTC accounts.
Cool. And maybe let's just document one or two of the columns.
Sure. So, so this would be the final name, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You run account ID and maybe account name are good candidates.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Account name. Oh, I don't need those quotes, do I?
No, it's just from the docs, they were useful. It's fine.
Gotcha.
You can leave the tests in because we're not actually going to run them right now. But gotcha. You would ideally like use unique and not null where appropriate. And just you can delete that last column. We don't need to. Yeah, it's cool. So you can go ahead and save this.
Auto saved.
Perfect.
Version 1.
Oh, we want version 2.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. Oh, version 2 was like the old version where you didn't have to specify version.
Like, what version of the document?
No, sorry. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. So this identifies to DBT which type of schema.yaml you're running, if it's the old school one or the new school one. Cool. So you can run DBT compile.
Oh, I have
here.
to.
Oh, yeah. You can like, new tab or Control C. Perfect. Yeah. And so DBT is going to recreate this manifest with all of your like tests and models in it. And so we don't need to run that DBT docs generate part again. Actually, I shouldn't say that because it's going to change in the future, but we won't run it right now. In the future, you might need to. Cool. And so we can run DBT docs serve again. And if we navigate to SFDC accounts, it's actually, there's a cool search bar at the top. So you should be able to just type in like account and see it show up. Cool. Okay, so you can see your description there, and then there's just a description for account ID and account name. So you can expand these now and show the full description. So it's cool if you have like a dozen or so words to say about a model or a column, but frequently you have a lot more to say about it than that. So we can do one more thing, which is if you don't mind going back to your editor, can you create a new file in here called like sfdcaccount.md? Cool. And so there's a new concept in DBT version 0.11, and it's called a docs block. And it kind of works similar to a macro, but you can put arbitrary markdown in there and then reference it from a schema.yaml file. So maybe we can write some markdown for the SFDC accounts table.
Right.
Yeah. And so, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, write it up. Perfect.
Something like that.
Yeah, cool. Okay, now at like just above your header here, we have to put this inside of a block so DBT knows what we're documenting.
Okay.
The file name isn't actually significant here. So you can do like a curly bracket and then a %,
yep.
and then type docs and a space. And then you have to name these docs. So SFDC account is probably a good name. And then close the brackets. And same thing at the bottom, you want end docs.
One word?
Yep. Great. So you can save this.
Okay.
And then the last thing to do is connect schema.yaml to our new documentation. So if you go to your new schema.yaml file, where we have a description for SFDC account, we want to remove that. And then we're going to effectively like ref the documentation. So instead of ref, the command's called doc, it's just doc.
Okay.
And then parentheses and give the name of the docs we just built. Cool. And I think that Jinja gets mad at you, so we can just put the whole thing inside of double quotes.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. The quotes that you had that were good before. In addition to those quotes, we need maybe single quotes around the whole thing. Will work here.
You say whole thing, the doc in parentheses?
Including the curly brackets. Jinja's going to think that the double curlies are like opening a dictionary. Gotcha. So we just have to say this is a string. Great. So you can save this.
Okay.
And do one more quick DBT compile.
And yeah, so here's so this is the whole markdown object.
Yeah, there it is. So this supports like full markdown, so you can put tables and what have you in here. It's pretty flexible.
That's really
what's
awesome.
your vision for how this gets used? Is your vision that every model is going to get a description and every column is going to get a description?
Yeah, I think that a lot of different people have a lot of opinions about how they want to handle documentation. So we tried to build this in a way where we're kind of giving people tools and they can build their own sort of frameworks around those tools. So just for instance, we built this docs block for account ID and account name, which are two columns that probably show up in many different models. And so by documenting them once, we can kind of pull in that documentation in any model that has an account ID, assuming it's the same, exact definition. So I think there's opportunities to sort of like spend a lot of time documenting a single column really well. If it's like user ID, like what does it mean to be a user, things like that, for example. So I will also say that,
sorry, to clarify. So
yeah,
like for example, we could write a doc macro for account ID that we then reference every place we reference account SFDC account ID in any of our models anywhere.
That's exactly right. And so that's really useful when you have things like if you build a relationships test, like DBT will render a foreign key in here that you can click and jump between models. So like just say SFDC contact has a foreign key to SFDC account. And so you can click in there and see exactly what the description is for account ID. More to your original question, it's all very flexible. You can kind of like enforce at your company. Every model needs to have a description, every column and every model should be described. I also think there's things that DBT can do to make this easier. So one of the things we want to add is sort of a strict option where DBT will check if every one of your columns is documented in specific models. And if they're not documented, or if there's a mismatch, like you've documented more columns than actually exist in the model, then you can get like an error as you would from like a regular DBT test. I think that would be really powerful.
Yeah, this would be awesome because I could see us as part of kind of our regular DBT runs, basically having deploying some instance that hosts these docs specifically for our repo, and this would be just because like that for me, it was a big question of like, all right, we hire a new data analyst. How are they going to easily discover what data we have and what tables we have? And you can kind of look at the list in the database, but that's not super helpful. So
right.
This is pretty cool.
It's a really interesting point, and it's a question of like, who are these who is this for, this documentation? So certainly DBT users like will feel at home in this project breakdown by file tree and like package and what have you. But if you click over to the database tab next to where it says project, this is sort of a more familiar like schema table breakdown. And so we're doing a lot of thinking about how to design data warehouses, like how to use custom schemas and this new aliasing feature in DBT to build like really obvious data warehouses where it's very clear where you go to find the production Salesforce data and like where you go to find the production like Zora data or whatever. So I think that'll be really interesting. And that is totally geared towards the downstream consumer that's like a data analyst, but doesn't know about how the modeling layer works.
Yeah.
Similarly, if there's ETL people, like they probably don't care about your DBT project structure so much. They want to see like, what are the tables that I'm going to break if I update this source or something like that.
Yeah.
So sort of the intersection of all these people around modeling.
I did have a question. What are your plans around macros in here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it's going to be a pretty easy win to just like show the definitions for some of these things like schema.yaml files and macros and data tests, just to like surface them and show the file path and like the contents. We're definitely gonna do that shortly.
Okay.
I think longer term. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no. So just to like give an example of how I'm using macros, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm using them wrong. So like this one calls. That's all this file is doing is calling this main macro, and then I've kind of got them organized. So retention and then Zora subscription. So it calls this one, it's generating some basic CTEs. This one generates a ton of CTEs for each month. And I have a separate one that does the like primary select for each month. And it'd be cool. It's like hard to, somebody coming into this, it's kind of confusing how it connects together. So it'd be cool if there were ways to kind of jump between this function and where it's called.
Sure. So in that same manifest.json, we have all of the macros, like everything that's defined in your DBT project is present in the manifest. Okay. So we have a list of all the macros, and what's cool is they do, in a sense, participate in the DBT graph. And so for every model, we see all the macros that it calls. And for every macro, similarly, we can see any models that it references or other macros that it calls.
Cool.
So I don't know if it makes the most sense to like show the DAG visualization of macros, but I do think that there's an opportunity to say like, this macro is called here, here, and here, or like this model calls these macros, and have links to them, things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's a good question.
Or just really documenting what the macro is doing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This looks awesome, Drew.
Cool. Thank you so much for saying that.
This looks really cool, and it's appeals to my OCD nature just to document things and then have.
Yeah, right. I want to have like a score or something in the top right corner. It's like you've documented 70% of your models.
That'd be great.
Like code coverage, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Documentation coverage. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think this is much better than storing these sorts of things in a README. Like, Taylor, I'm thinking about Salesforce account IDs, and there's some wonkiness that we have between like 13-digit IDs and 18-digit IDs. And there's a UDF to convert it from one to the other, but I would hate for someone to log in, see account ID and account ID 18 and be like, what's going on here? And being able to just point them to this.
So like I have actually a macro that is constantly generating a UDF. And so I'm calling this UDF to just right up front, just convert it all to 18 character, and then I don't have to worry about it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a good idea. But certainly, something you want to document.
So we use Looker, and so there's some dashboards that sit right on top of these final files, and so we would just say like probably put in the description this Explorer or this dashboard references that this table.
Yeah,
so that'd be really useful.
We had talked for just a moment about a notion of sources in the graph, but I think the holy grail there is kind of connecting it all the way through to like BI. So being able to see like these are the models that our query in our BI tool, and specifically these are the links to the reports. So you want to go change something, like being able to see.
That's exactly what I would love, because we have like all of our lookml files here, and so we've got we're working on a refactor of all this stuff, but like having some of this either defined in DBT or just directly linked at least would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be so great. It's less clear to me, I guess, how to tackle that part besides like manually keeping a list. But it'd certainly be super valuable, so it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, good stuff.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I think this is one of the best live coding events I've ever been a part of.